Sure.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Where are the others? They're still joining. Okay. Let's wait for them. Okay, any doubts, anyone? Before we start with today's class?
No, sir.
No questions? How are you finding plant physiology?
Fine, sir.
Fine, right? Okay, so yesterday I asked you to read on few things. Did you get the time to do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me share the screen. Today we'll be covering some quite diverse topics that are important. And same with plant physiology also, I am not following the NCERT, you know, the way NCERT has structured plant physiology. I'm not strictly following that. So when we are discussing things and something is cropping up in the discussion, we are doing that topic there only. Okay. So we started with transportation, but I hope you all have realized that we have started hormones in between, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So about hormones, it's important because ultimately I'm going to link all the hormones with the transport, because remember above I told you that plant hormones are also transported uh, through the phloem. So before coming to phloem and dissecting phloem anatomically, I thought that let's also cover plant hormones first so that you understand, and then we can, otherwise what we will have to do is we will have to repeat certain things over and over again, and this way we will save that time, correct? Okay, so what did I ask you to read? Differentiation, dedifferentiation, redifferentiation, routing, etc. So let's begin. Who has read about differentiation and stuff? Just tell me orally.
I did, sir.
Yes, Mariam. What is differentiation? What do you understand of differentiation?
Differentiation is a process in which the cells divide,
Mhm.
to perform specific functions. And in this process, there is a lot of structural changes within the cell. The differentiation occurred. Examples of differentiation can be development of single-celled zygote into embryo, which is a multicellular
Yeah,
organism.
so embryo is, of course, it's differentiating, but any example in terms of plants?
The shoot apical meristem divides and
Yes, right.
it
Right.
grows.
Yes, so differentiation is, you understood. What is redifferentiation and dedifferentiation?
Sir, can I say?
Yes, Aisha.
Redifferentiation is
Going with re or d?
redifferentiation. What?
You're going with re or d? Redifferentiation or d?
D. Sorry, I'm going with D, not re.
Okay,
D.
dedifferentiation.
Redifferentiation, it's a differentiated cell that can regain its capacity for cell division under certain conditions and terms. This types of elements is called dedifferentiation, and redifferentiation. It is a dedifferentiated plant cell. Like once again, it loses its capacity to divide and become mature.
Okay. Okay, fine. So I'll take that as an answer. We'll discuss it in the details, but I'm happy that you did the homework and you realized certain things, so it will be easier for you to understand. Okay. So today, before going to other plant hormones, what I realized was that to make a good flow, to understand, so you understood that auxin, which is a part of your, which is a kind of your
Yes, sir.
cytokinin or indole acetic acid, all these indole butyric acid and phenyl acetic acid, they all are a part of auxin. They are all different types of auxins and they help in growth, right? Auxin is clear to you. Now, before going forward, today I thought of introducing this thing before we move forward. So you all can see the diagram.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is from your NCERT, and this is a schematic. So basically what we are going to first talk about is whether all these hormones or whatever is being transported. For that to happen, we need to actually make a column, water column, or a bulk like a bulk transport system in the xylem, correct? Now let's try to understand. Okay, so what we are discussing here is how, when root absorbs water, how the movement of that water takes place in the roots. Okay, so right here at this very extreme of this schematic is your xylem tissue. So remember, xylem is like a column. Okay, so they have just schematically shown xylem here, and here is your soil, is it correct? And in that soil you have your water molecules, which then will be absorbed, correct?
Yes.
Now about the plant cell, you already know about the plant cell. That plant cell has a membrane and a wall, correct?
Yes, sir.
So this inner is a membrane, okay, and the outer is a wall, but they have mentioned this as a membrane, but it does not matter. So let's say that there is a wall outside, there is a wall here. Now plasmodesmata is a new term which I thought we will discuss. Plasmodesmata are in plants because of the presence of cell wall, two adjacent cells. For the ease of exchange of substances, sometimes they have pores between their membrane and the wall both. So things can directly go from one cell into the other. Is it clear? So these holes here, which you see, this one, there'll be multiple such holes, are called plasmodesmata. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Just like nuclear
Yes,
pores,
sir.
the nucleus has certain pores, correct, through which substances go inside and outside, but that pore is very well regulated. Here it is just like both these cells have very heavy exchange all the time. So instead of setting a regulation, they have pores through which things can just diffuse. So to facilitate movement without utilizing energy, we need plasmodesmata. Now when water from the soil enters, these arrows are indicating the movement of water. There are two types of movement of water that you have to study for both your boards and entrance point of view. One is called apoplast and the other is called symplast. Now apoplast is where, when I say, let's start with symplast first. Symplast is, what does sim means? Remember antipode, sympode? Yes, Mariam.
Similar
Sim
or like
means,
together.
yes, interconnected, correct? So in symplast, let first write down the definition that you're going to write in exams. Write down the symplastic movement or the symplast system is a system of interconnected protoplasts or cytoplasms. Protoplast is a better term because in plants there is a cell wall and the inner membrane starts the protoplast. So symplast system is a system of interconnected protoplasts. Sim means interconnected. There also, when I was telling you symport, there were two things connected, tied together, and both were required to cross the membrane, right? Remember the
Yes, sir.
symport, antipode movement? Yes. So interconnected protoplasts, write down the adjacent cells, are connected through plasmodesmata. The adjacent cells are connected through plasmodesmata. And during this symplastic movement, the water moves the water moves through the cells. Okay. So the water moves through the cell. Now, to move through the cell, look at these arrows here. So if something has to move through the cell, wherever there is plasmodesmata, things are easier, right? It can just move. But at other places where there is no plasmodesmata, like look at this. So if let's suppose they are moving through the interstitial space, okay. So this kind of movement, which I am now drawing here, needs the water to cross the membrane, correct? At certain points, the membrane needs to be crossed in a symplastic movement, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's why this symplastic movement is slower, is relatively slow. Okay, so this question has come that which is faster, apoplastic movement or symplastic movement? So symplastic movement is slower, apoplastic is comparatively faster. So you can write down one more point, that the symplastic movement is relatively slower, And a very important thing for symplastic movement is it is relatively slower and it is aided by cytoplasmic streaming. You know what is cytoplasmic streaming? Cytoplasmic streaming. Anyone knows what is cytoplasmic streaming, people?
Lined by cytoplasm.
What?
Lined by cytoplasm.
It's not. No. Anyone of you has seen a microscopic video of aquatic plants like hydrilla or any water plant? So their cells are transparent, and if you see, they have chlorophyll, chloroplasts, right? So if you see under the microscope, you will see that their chloroplasts are moving inside the cytoplasm, as if cytoplasm is like pushing them, streaming. Streaming means whenever a river is flowing or a brook is flowing, we call that it's a stream of river, correct? A boat flows on the stream of rivers. So when the cytoplasm is streaming, like it's flowing, things which are present in cytoplasm also flows with it. Is it clear? So that push or that energy comes from the cytoplasm itself. The fluid is the cytoplasm, which pushes the things and make it flow. So this cytoplasmic streaming also helps the symplastic movement. Okay. So this is one thing that you should know and remember, that cytoplasmic streaming aids symplastic movement. Okay. Another thing that happens through cytoplasmic streaming is the movement of chloroplasts. Like I was saying, in aquatic plants, chloroplasts are not fixed. They are not organs that are fixed at one place in the cell. They keep on moving from one part or one region of the cell to other part, or even from one cell to another, if there is plasmodesmata through which they can just flow. So let's say this is an epidermis cell. So the cell has cytoplasm, right? This is the cell of a cortex. Both are plant cells having different functions, but both of them are connected through plasmodesmata. So cytoplasmic streaming, if it is in this direction, it can cause certain organs or organelles to just cross it and go into the other cell, right? You understand?
Yes, sir.
So cytoplasmic streaming helps in symplastic movement of water. Along with that, it also helps in the movement of organelles like chloroplasts. It's asked here also. And in aquatic plants especially, it's seen in aquatic plants that chloroplasts are moving through cytoplasmic streaming. There are very beautiful videos online. You can just go on YouTube and look for these videos, and people just from people who work on plants, do research on plants in labs, they can just make these videos in their free time and then they just upload it. Okay. Okay. So you understood SimPlast? It's sim
Yes,
means
sir.
interconnected. Wherever the word sim comes, it's interconnected. And what is interconnected? Protoplast or protoplasm. That's why it's SimPlastic movement. Now, apoplast. Apo means apo.
Beneath.
It's epi. Epi is above. You're saying beneath, like inside. It's endo. Apo is like not exactly at the region where it should be, but apart from it. Okay. So apoplastic movement. So there is a color gradient also. If you see that if water does not touches this region, this dark gray region where it has to cross plasma membrane, if it moves without crossing plasma membrane from one cell to another continuously, that is called a apoplastic movement. Okay, so let's just define it. You will understand the difference. Write down. In an apoplastic system, in an apoplastic system, in an apoplastic system, the cell walls of adjacent continuous cells, the cell walls of adjacent continuous cells makes the movement of water, happen through it, makes the movement of water happen through it, like continuously. It's just happening. So wherever there is this plasmodesmata, let's say water started, it got absorbed in one of the, follow this red line, it got absorbed in one of the plant and then it started moving. Okay, and it is just continuously moving because it's not crossing the membrane. Okay, so it will just keep moving except for this region. So this region here is a Casparian strip, which is very important, and for this purpose I have this another figure as well. Can you see this? This is a so this is a schematic and this is like a real diagram which I was explaining to you. Look here. So this is the apoplastic movement. You see it's just following the interstitial space and it's continuously moving between the spaces of the cells, right? It's not crossing membrane anywhere. Do you see?
Yes, sir.
But at one point of time when it reaches this place, so I'm just color coding it red. So there is a Casparian strip present. Now this Casparian strip is impervious to water, like it does not allow water to cross it. And why it is there? Because sometimes in nature, plants can get waterlogged, correct? There can be floods, lots of water. So plant can get waterlogged.
Yes, sir.
It is to save themselves. Like plants need water, but if you keep them in lots of water, they will not, so they don't need all that water. And if all that water keeps on entering into the tissues and into the plant, it will damage other organs and systems. So to protect itself from excess water, it has this Casparian strip. So the first initial layers of cells from the root, so these are the root nodules, small, and so each is a single cellular nodule. This absorbs water. If it absorbs water and goes through the cytoplasm, through cytoplasmic streaming, and it crosses the membrane at multiple points, that is called a SimPlastic movement, right? This one. But if it does not crosses membrane anywhere, it is called a apoplastic movement. But when it comes at Casparian strip, there is no option then to become a SimPlastic movement, correct? Because with apoplastic movement, you can only reach, the water can only reach till Casparian strip is present. Beyond that, it has to cross the membrane. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you see here, when it comes here, it has to now cross the membrane and go through the through the plasmodesmata with the help of cytoplasmic streaming, and then enter xylem. Then enter here, correct? And this is the vessel where bulk flow hypothesis then takes it up because of negative pressure potential. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So both apoplast and symplast is clear to you?
Yes, sir.
So write down one more point. In apoplastic movement, the water moves only through the intercellular spaces between the walls. The water moves only through the intercellular spaces between the cell walls. Okay. Now write down Casparian strip. What is Casparian strip? That is this is asked. So Casparian strip is always present. So these are layers, and you can understand all these terms are familiar to you by now, correct? Epidermis means, the word epi means every living system has, yes, every living system has an epidermis. For us, our epidermis is our skin, correct? For plants also, there is an outer layer of cells on every organ, whether it's root, shoot, fruit, leaves, whatever it is. So that will be called epidermis, correct? So there is a layer of epidermis. And then after epidermis starts the cortex, the outer thing, right? If it is cortex, which means it is present on the outer surface. So it's just present beneath the epidermis. So anyways, epidermis is the covering, right? Below the covering is also outside only, right? It's not
Yes,
very
sir.
inside. So it's called cortex. When you come inside, you have an endodermis, correct?
Yes, sir.
So this is endodermis. And in the endodermis, you have Casparian strip. So you have to remember where, in which layer Casparian strip is present. Okay. And then we move into pericycle, and from pericycle, so this layer, the sequence of these layers have to be remembered. It goes into xylem, and from xylem, it comes into the bulk flow, like the vessel system starts, which I was teaching you before. But to make that context understandable to you, is it clear here? So these are xylem vessels. Look at these like actual figure. So whatever I'm marking in blue are here. So the water has to reach here, and to reach here, the later part of the travel is only symplastic. It cannot be apoplastic, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Perfect. So write down Casparian strip is present in the endodermis. Is present in the endodermis. and is impervious to water. And is impervious to water. And if you want to make anything impervious to water, what can you do? Very simple. In biology, if you have to make anything impervious to water, what you should do? What can you do? What can be done to make anything impervious to water? By now, you know of terms called hydrophilic, hydrophobic substances. So we can deposit something which repels water, correct?
Yes, sir.
है ना? So in this Casparian strip, the chemical or the compound which allows it to stay as impervious is called suberin. Suberin is the compound which makes Casparian strips impervious to water. Okay, so Casparian strips are suberized. In another term, they are suberized. That's why they do not allow water to pass through it. So wherever the cell is not there, there is Casparian strip. So the only option water has now is to show a symplastic movement, get inside the cell and then cross the layer. Okay, because they cannot penetrate the layer. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just go over this. Give me 3 minutes. Excuse me for 3 minutes. I'll be back. Okay, just look at this, and if you have any doubts or anything, I'll be back in 2 minutes. Cool.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, am I audible, people?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's too cold. Hot coffee is good. Any doubts? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once the water, after crossing everything, so there are two ways through which it can cross all the layers, starting from the root nodule. It can either follow a apoplastic path or a symplastic path. Finally, beyond Casparian strip, it has to follow a symplastic path and then go into the xylem vessels. Once it is in the xylem vessel, then it's free to move, right? Because I told you, xylem, 3/4 of the xylem is dead, correct? So technically, it's just like a hose pipe, a water pipe, a plastic pipe through which water flows, correct?
Yes, sir.
But when water flows in our garden pipes or hose pipes, there is a positive pressure because the tap is pushing the water into the pipe, correct?
Yes, sir.
But here, so that kind of pressure where the source pushes the water towards the sink, like where it has to go, is called a positive pressure. But in this case, there is slight positive pressure as well, but there most of it is negative pressure, which is created from the top. Just like when you suck a liquid through a straw, when you are enjoying a cold drink or anything from the straw, that kind of movement, the glass is not pushing the liquid, you are pulling the liquid, right? So pull creates a negative pressure and push creates a positive pressure, correct? Is it correct?
Yes, sir.
So what we have to see whenever we have to judge the negative, whether the pressure is negative or positive, if the direction in which the pressure is applied and the direction of liquid is same, it's a positive one, right? If you push a liquid from the bottom, so the pressure is upwards and liquid is also moving upwards, like the push is from bottom to top. and the liquid is also moving from bottom to top, then it's a positive one, correct? If you are applying a pull from the top, so it's basically generated at the top, the pressure, and acting downwards to pull it, but water is going upwards, correct? So that kind of pressure is negative one. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, nice. No one has any doubts about this? Shall I move forward?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so knowing this, why I introduced this is there are certain structures that are important for a plant. So write down few things that are important for a plant. Write down additional structures important in water absorption, water and mineral absorption. And to know these structures, you should know the basic biology first. So this is the basic biology. Now write down important structures for water and mineral absorption. In this, the first and the foremost important is mycorrhiza. I think we have studied mycorrhiza before also, right?
Yes, sir.
Can anyone, so it's simple. Can anyone tell me what it is?
The symbiotic association between the root of the plant and fungus.
The symbiotic association between? Yes, the root nodules and the fungal partner, correct? And specifically, anyone knows what is this fungal partner? Okay, so write down first. Write down. You're right. A mycorrhiza is a symbiotic association. Mycorrhiza is a symbiotic association of root with a fungal partner. So it's not okay. So let me ask you one question. How is it different from a fungal infection? How can you think, or is it a fungal infection that actually after infection worked out and for the benefit of the plant? What do you think? How we say that something is a association? Because fungus is associated with the cells of the root, correct? And we call it a mycorrhiza. They form granule nodule like structures, correct? But then how do we say that it's not an infection, or is it an infection? What do you think?
It benefits both the fungus and the plant.
So do you think it's an infection that worked for the benefit? Plant could not have invited it, right? Think biologically.
Yes, sir.
Like if you think logically and through evolution, plant could not have sent out messages to all the fungus around to come and make associations with my root. Fungus somewhere started forming a network around the roots or started penetrating the roots, right, for its benefit, but ultimately ended up benefiting the plant also. So plant didn't get rid of it. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
The plant did nothing to get rid of it, or maybe it could not do anything to get rid of it, but somehow it worked for the benefit of both. Now, what do you think is the benefit for fungus here first? Why did this association came into existence at all? What is the benefit for fungus? Which?
Shelter.
Sorry?
Shelter.
Shelter. Fungus are, if I remember correctly, when I was teaching you about fungus, I told you they are cosmopolitan. They don't need shelter. They don't need anyone's help, right? They are the most, what do you say, opportunistic organisms on the planet. Wherever they find humidity, slight substrate to feed on, any dead and decaying matter, they just live there. So why do you think they all of a sudden needed shelter from plant? Anything else you can think of apart from, because this is the first thing that comes to our mind, right? Anything else? Any stronger point, Mariam? Good going. Just think about it. See, if it only was for shelter, fungus could have taken shelter anywhere. Why a root? Why the root of a plant only?
For food, to get more minerals.
To get, yes, correct. To get what? More
Minerals to make food.
minerals. Minerals, you know what is minerals? Minerals are like inorganic things which are dissolved in water, like mineral water which we drink. The packaged drinking mineral water has magnesium, calcium. That is mineral.
Sir, fungus can make food their own, right?
You tell me. I have taught you the 5 kingdom classification. The first criteria because of which fungus is kept as a different kingdom altogether, kingdom fungi, is that they are heterotrophic.
Autotrophic.
Is fungus autotrophic?
Oh no.
Fungus,
No.
fungus can, the first and foremost criteria is that fungus are heterotrophic. Most of them are saprophytic, feeding on dead and decaying matter, and they have a cell wall. So a heterotroph with a cell wall does not fits in animal and does not also fits in plant. That's why it was kept separate as kingdom fungi. If it was autotrophic and having a cell wall, it was a plant. Right? Plants are autotrophic and plants have cell wall. And if it was heterotrophic without a cell wall, it would have been an animal. Correct?
Yes,
In animal
sir.
kingdom. But it's a heterotrophic which depends on foreign things, like depend on outside environment for food, but it has a cell wall made of
Chitin.
perfect chitin. So you remember things. Good. That's why it's a separate kingdom altogether. Now the problem is you said minerals, but let me just correct you. You are right. Your answer is right, but not minerals. They need raw materials, certain raw materials, and not raw materials. Basically, they need food, sugars, and nitrogen containing substances. Now plants can actually fix nitrogen and utilize nitrogen, right? You know about this. Plant utilize
Yes, sir.
nitrates and nitrites from the soil. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Because of and due to this, plants also makes associations with certain bacteria which are nitrogen fixing bacteria. This also I taught you.
Yes, sir.
Any example of bacteria?
Cyanobacteria.
Perfect. So they fix nitrogen for plants. So plants can get nitrogen very much and they like these bacteria. They're like, okay, come and live in our root cells. You know, we'll give you now bacteria need shelter, correct? Because otherwise someone will eat or it's a single cell. So to survive, if you are inside a host cell, it's good for you because till the host cell is protected, you are protected. So it gives food and shelter to bacteria. Bacteria fixes nitrogen for it. So plants utilize lots of nitrogen. These fungus that make a mycorrhiza with plants also make this mycorrhiza for sugar and nitrogen based substances. So write down. Did I tell you? So I have just defined, right? A mycorrhiza is a symbiotic
Yes, sir.
association. Yeah. Write down the fungal partner. The fungal partner creates a network around the root cell. The fungal partner penetrates and creates, right? Both. So they do both. The fungal partner penetrates and creates a network around the root cells of the plant. Okay, so I asked, I did not completed my question. So I only asked what is the benefit for fungus. So it is they get sugar and nitrogen containing compounds. What is the benefit for plant? They are not fixing nitrogen. Bacteria were fixing nitrogen, cyanobacteria. To make an association with them makes sense. But what are fungus doing? Now you have to be very logical and just think. You know already the answer. Once I'll give you the answer, you'll be like, yes, 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 yes. But just think, what do you think fungus can do for plant? Think. Okay, the answer is in the structure of fungus. Remember I told you about structure of all the fungus have one standard structure.
Yes, sir.
And what is that standard structure?
Dome-like something.
Sorry?
Dome-like.
Yes, so that is the top, the bulb from where spores are released. Go down. What is there?
Hyphae.
Exactly. So the answer is related to hyphae. Now I have given the answer only. Now come on, give the answer. What do you think fungus are helping the plants with?
It absorbs
Yes, perfect.
things from soils.
Fungus have an extensive hyphae network, and it can just make as long hyphae network as it wants. Remember I showed you one video in one of the classes where there was this one fungus taking over the whole rotting log. Did I show you this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the network of hyphae can be as long as the fungus wants, correct? Whereas for plants, it is limited, correct? The root network is like it can grow it, but it will not do it very fast, correct? As fungus can do, and very extensive. So fungal partner can actually increase the surface area of absorption for raw materials. So it absorbs everything from everywhere around, and because it's penetrating the root nodules, it will bring that nutrient and give it to the root cells and say that, okay, take this, now give me sugars. When you finally make food, I want my cut out of it, sugars and nitrogen based compounds, for me to make my cell wall and my chitinous structures and everything. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
That is the benefit. So write down: the fungal partner penetrates and forms a network around the root cells. Okay. Again, logically, this was a question: in which aged plants or plants of which age you will see more mycorrhiza like associations? Younger plants or older plants?
Younger.
Yes, perfect. Why younger, Mariam? What was your rationale?
Because they did not develop.
Yes, so
much.
their root network is yet to develop and proliferate. So it's beneficial for them. Once it's a full-fledged, very big tree, it may not require, fungal associations, right? It still may form it, but it's more required, or more of this association is seen in younger plants. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
The younger root nodules. So write down the hyphae. The hyphae creates a very large surface area. The hyphae creates a very large surface area for absorption of minerals, ions, water from the soil. For the absorption of minerals, ions, and waters, majorly these three from the soil, that that a root cannot do, or that a root can do with limited, that a root can do in a limited manner. So the root is limited for this absorption, because only the root nodules, where the root nodules are, it can only absorb things from the surrounding areas, but other areas it cannot factor in, right? Hello? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, so what I was saying, I think I got mute.
Root can do.
Yes,
A root can do in.
A root can do the same thing in a limited manner. And also, do you remember I told you each hyphae is like a single layer thing, a single cell layer. So it can just absorb anything directly into it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So hyphae are just like capillaries, very good with whatever they do. Like absorbing function is very good because they can reach everywhere. And write down the plant partner. The plant partner provides. The plant partner provides sugars and nitrogen containing compounds to the fungus. The plant partner provides sugars and nitrogen containing compounds to the fungus for its growth and development. Now, this relationship over time has become very dominant in nature, and to such extent that you will be surprised to know that there are certain species of plants that cannot grow without a mycorrhiza formation. Especially there are the trees called the pinus trees. You know about the pinus trees,
Yes, sir.
which have these cone-like things. They are mostly in the hilly areas, correct? If you see, nowadays people also for aesthetic purposes grow them in normal areas, but pinus trees actually come from like hilly areas, and the seed of the pinus tree cannot germinate at all if there is no fungus present in the soil to make a mycorrhiza with it. So the radical that comes out, remember, whenever a seed germinates, there is a radical that comes out, that's sprouting off the ground. Remember that thing we studied?
Yes, sir.
And when that happens for a pinus seed, the first thing it needs to do is to make a fungal partner, make a mycorrhiza, and then absorb as much as it can. And then only it will germinate. Otherwise, it will fail to germinate and will die. So you can write down mycorrhiza can sometimes be an obligate association. Obligate means which is necessary. You cannot do it without it. So mycorrhiza sometimes can be an obligate association. Okay, is it clear? So is mycorrhiza clear to you?
Yes, sir.
So if mycorrhiza formation will happen at which part? Epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle, where it will happen according to you? In which layer? Simple, the outermost, the epidermis, right? The root node. So these things, you see these structures?
Yes, sir.
If you see clearly, it is a single cell. See here, it is just one cell, right? So these are single cell structures that just grow out in order to scan more and more area and to absorb more. So if these things get associated with a fungal partner, let's say, and that fungal partner can spread mycorrhiza to whatever like lengths it want, because it's a fungus, all it needs to grow. So do you think the same cell can now absorb from a larger area, right?
Yes.
Just because of its association with the fungus partner. So that's why it's important for this layer, the epidermis layer, the outermost nodule layer. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
And once you get substances, then you already have transport mechanisms in place, like the apoplastic or symplastic. So you do not need fungus to deliver things very deep inside your tissue. You just need it to deliver here, and then you can take care of it, correct? So that's why this part was important. Now, the point is, once, let's come back. So this is clear, correct? So let's come back to differentiation, because that we have to study from here. So I will first take differentiation. Okay. Again, differentiation. So as already told, friend, differentiation, right? As already told by Mariam, differentiation is taking an example of any new tissue. So whenever a seed germinates, or whenever a plant starts developing, or an embryo starts developing, in the beginning, what happens is that there are one type. Remember, so you gave an example of embryo, Mariam. So remember, when I was teaching about embryos, I told you that the first few cells of the embryos are pluripotent. They can literally go and make anything in the body, right? Our whole body
Yes, sir.
starts from a single cell, which is a zygote. And when the zygote starts dividing, it becomes an embryo. And the first few divisions, the cells, their fate is yet not like set. They can become anything. But after certain rounds of division, more and more totipotent, in the beginning, they are totipotent, like they can become anything. But after that, more and more pluripotent cells starts coming out. Like they can become multiple things, but not something which is very distantly different. Like there can be a stem cell for all different types of blood cells. Remember blood formation? So we have red blood cells, platelets, white blood cells. In white blood cells also, there are different types of white blood cells, correct? So there
Yes,
can
sir.
be one single stem cell which can make all these type of cells. Or in muscle cells, we have smooth, striated, cardiac, different type of muscles, right? So one stem cell can make different type of cells. But a muscle cell cannot make a blood cell. That is called pluripotency. And after, even when the organism develops completely, we have so different types of tissues and cells that one cell cannot go and form any other kind of cell. Like for neurons, I give you an example that neurons are terminally differentiated cells, which means they have reached the end of their differentiation process. Now they are specialized in only one type of function, and they will only do that for the rest of their life, and they will die. They will not divide and become more and more. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
So through differentiation, lots and lots of uh, uh, different cell fates are formed from one single. So in this, you used a word apical meristem. Who used it?
I did, sir.
Yes. What is apical meristem, Mariam?
Helps in growth.
But what is a meristem? What is a meristematic tissue? That you have studied. Yes. What is a meristematic tissue? Hello,
Yes, sir.
Mariam, you're speaking or you're not speaking? I was asking, what is a meristematic tissue? How will you define a meristematic tissue?
Anything that divides and
Yeah,
grows.
exactly. So meristematic tissue
Indiscriminately.
has a potential of dividing, and it divides very, very profusely. It's the most active kind of tissue in the whole plant, and that's why it's present at the tips, bud tips. So if it is present at the top, it's called apical meristem. And there are similarly, there are root meristematic tissues also, which are present at the root tip. So at the shoot tip and at the root tip,
Sir,
there are
your audio got disconnected.
Hello. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Is it fine now? I don't know what happened.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was saying that meristematic tissues have the capability to divide. So they are actively dividing tissues, which clearly means that they are not differentiated yet. They are very active. They still can divide and form different kind of cells and tissues, right? So that's why apical meristem undergoes differentiation. And what happens? Can you complete?
And grows or forms something.
What do you think it can form? What something can it form potentially?
Leaves or flowers, roots.
Yeah, different types of tissues, you mean to say, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So which have different functions, correct? Can you see the screen that I'm sharing?
No, sir.
Yes,
the
sir.
note.
What are you seeing?
My
No,
note.
sir.
There's nothing.
No.
Sir, my note board.
Oh, okay.
The board which you're showing.
Okay.
That is
Okay. So just maybe I'm not able- okay. So let's define. Write down differentiation. Write down. In the process of differentiation. In the process of differentiation, cells are derived from root apical and shoot apical meristems. Root apical and shoot apical meristems. There's one more layer which is very actively dividing the plant, which is called cambium. Yes, CAMBIUM. So root apical meristem, shoot apical meristem, and cambium, they are derived from these three tissues, which are active in dividing and mature to perform specific functions. And mature to perform specific functions. So this is called differentiation. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now the confusing part is redifferentiation and dedifferentiation. So to remember this, I just use this one analogy. You all know about forestation.
Yes, sir.
So there is something called afforestation, then or there's something called reforestation and deforestation, right?
Yes, sir.
So what is forestation? Like to make forests, like forestation. You plant trees, you make forests. Then there is something called deforestation, which means you removed the forest. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then reforestation, which means the forest which was once removed is now again being established, correct?
Yes, sir.
Similarly, here also, the ability to differentiate is being taken and reestablished back. So differentiation is making terminally differentiated, specifically specialized cells and tissues for specific functions. If there is a differentiated cell, a differentiated tissue, which means it has now a specific function. After differentiation, if I do a de-differentiation, what does it mean? Just 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Sir, you're mute.
Oh, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So there is differentiation. And now if I want to de-differentiate a tissue, what does it means?
Reverse process.
Yes. And what I am reversing?
The differentiated cell to
The
less
differentiated
differentiated cell.
state. The state where it becomes specialized. Now I'm taking that back and making it less specialized. You understand?
Yes, sir.
You did your bachelor's and your master's and you did a specialization. You did MBBS and you specialized into something and you become a ENT specialist. So you are a differentiated doctor now. Make sense? Can you understand through this analogy?
Yes, sir.
Now all of a sudden I come and take you back to your MBBS classes, which means I am taking that differentiated specialized form back and I'm making you more generalized now. Again, from MBBS you can become anything, correct? Right?
Yes, sir.
That is called de-differentiation. So define de-differentiation. It is the process. De-differentiation is the process in which already differentiated living cells which had lost the capacity to divide, regains their division capability. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Now redifferentiation is simple because it's again became a generalized form and it again has the capability to divide. So what will happen? It will again differentiate and become special, right? Cells
Yes.
always go towards specialization, you know. So write down redifferentiation also. Redifferentiation. It is the process in which de-differentiated cells de-differentiated, sorry, it is the process in which differentiated cells are reformed from de-differentiated cells. Is it clear? So you cannot have a redifferentiation without de-differentiation, but the opposite is possible, correct? It is possible that sometimes cell do undergo de-differentiation and then stay there, do not redifferentiate. But if they are redifferentiating, it is a proof that some cells have de-differentiated, correct?
Yes, sir.
It is like the second time they are repeating the same kind of life cycle. It's analogous to that. So if there is no de-differentiation, then whatever the cell is doing is only called differentiation. After differentiation, you take a step back through de-differentiation, and then when you take a step forward to become the same thing which you were actually before also, then it's called redifferentiation. So reformed from de-differentiated cells and now gain and again gain, write down, and again get the ability to perform specific specialized functions. That is called redifferentiation. Clear, everyone? No confusion?
Yes, sir.
No confusion, right?
No, sir.
Okay. I also asked you yesterday to figure out about fruits. So before we go to water movement in xylem, let's also discuss fruit here because this topic is started. What do we mean by a fruit? So differentiation, de-differentiation, and then re-differentiation is all clear. Okay. Right. Let's also cover fruit. Anyone, what is a fruit?
That has a seed.
For that point, if you see
Edible
apple,
seed.
apple also has a seed, right?
But it's not very prominent.
What do you mean by prominent seed? Apple seeds are very prominent.
Sir, I heard that false fruits are those fruits which do not have seeds, or like seedless.
No, true fruits can also be seedless. For that, what you have to achieve is you do not allow eggs to formed in the ovary, right? Seedless grapes. We all, how many of you have eaten seeded grapes? Like grapes which has seeds. There are grapes.
I've written it.
Anyone has eaten grapes that has seeds?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Which do you like, seeded or seedless?
Seedless.
Yes.
Seedless, right? But if I
Yeah.
ask, is grape a true fruit or no?
Yes.
Is grape a true fruit?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And which is a false fruit?
Apple.
Okay. Now grapes do not have seeds and apple have seeds. What Mariam said, Mariam herself said that she has heard that false fruits are those fruits which are seedless. So from that definition, grapes has to be false fruits, right? Right? But grapes are true fruits. Apple which has seeds is false fruit. So it's not associated with seeds, that we understood through our discussion right here, right? So what do you think it is associated with? If it is not associated with seeds, what it is associated with? How can we define a true fruit? For this, you all have to go back to 10th. Remember in 10th you studied flower, the structure of flower.
Yes, sir.
So flowers have petals.
Sir, I came to know, can I say, but I'm not sure about that. Like
Sure,
the
sure sometime. Yeah, tell me.
The fruit which is formed from the fertilization of the, like with the fertilization, they are the true fruits, right?
You said everything but not the answer. Just like classical Aisha. What is fertilized? I was coming to flower. Which part of flower gets fertilized?
Flower. Ovary, sorry, not
Ovum.
Exactly. So if you want to define fruit, it's just a very simple one-line definition. A ripened ovary is called a fruit. Okay, a true fruit is a ripened ovary. An ovary starts ripening after it fertilizes. So a fertilized ovary, when it gets ripened, it becomes fruit. So what we are actually eating is the ovary of a flower, of a plant. So in a flower, you see there are petals, right? That's why I was making flower. And then towards the end, there is a stigma, style, and ovary, right?
Yes.
You make things like this. And then there are sepals, which are greenish here. And sometimes if it is a bisexual flower, they also have androecium, right? The stamen and the pollen sac, right? But this is the stigma on which pollen lands, and then there is a tube which goes through the style, and here is the ovary in which there are ovum or the eggs, ovules we call it, remember? And this
Yes, sir.
pollen reaches the ovule and then fertilizes, and then everything of this sheds, this goes away. Once fertilization is achieved, there is no purpose for flower. Flower is the whole point of making flowers for a plant was to attract pollinators and for pollination to happen or fertilization to happen. Once fertilization happens, the flower sheds, and this part, this only part, which is ovary, starts getting bigger and starts ripening. So it bulges, it swells, it ripens, and what all the eggs which were inside, they become seeds, right? And the ripened ovary becomes the fruit. So what we are eating, if it is a true fruit, then we are eating a ripened ovary of a plant. How do you feel now? Good.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So if you can still make a true fruit seedless, if by any biotechnological thing or by genetic manipulation, you do not allow these ovules to form, in that case also, fertilization, pollen grain will enter, but it will not go and fertilize because there is nothing to fertilize because there is no ovum or no egg. But after this thing, there is a chemical cue that all these will shed and the ovary will start ripening. So fruit is there, but inside there is no seed, right? This is the reason that some plants make fruits which have only one seed. Can you give an example with a fruit with only one seed? Any example with a fruit that has one seed?
Peach.
Peach. Yes, peach has one seed, right?
Mango.
What?
Mango, sir.
Yes, mango, the most common, the king of fruits. Mango has one.
Avocado.
What?
Avocado.
Avocado,
Yeah.
one seed. Dates, says Omar. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also.
Good. And then there are fruits which has multiple seeds. For example,
Pomegranate.
pomegranate. So okay, pomegranate. Interesting. Is pomegranate a true seed? True fruit?
Yes. No.
No? Are you sure?
It's not. I think so.
Is pomegranate a true fruit or it's a false fruit?
So can I ask you? Yeah. Actually, I'm sure it's a true fruit. It's coming in berry species, right?
So what are you eating when you're eating pomegranate?
The ripened seed.
Exactly. You are
ovule.
not eating the ovary. You are eating the seed itself, right?
Yes, sir.
You chew and eat the seed. The rest of the covering, which is the ovary, you just throw it. Correct?
Yeah.
So is pomegranate a true fruit?
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
But what are you eating here?
Seeds.
Seeds, not the ovary, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So fruits where we are actually eating the seed itself, but not the ovary. So you can never have a seedless pomegranate. You understand the concept of fruits now? See, there's a lot of science in fruits. Can you have a seedless pomegranate? No, because pomegranate is seed only, which we eat. So those kind of fruits where the seed ripens instead of ovary, and see, ovary also ripens. So the covering that we remove, and if you open a pomegranate, there'll be a covering, hard outer covering, and inside there'll be yellow things which are segregating compartments, right? All those we don't eat, right? We just remove all
Yes,
that
sir.
flesh and throw. So we are throwing out the actual ovary and we are taking the seeds with some endosperm around it and we are eating that. Okay. So it's a fruit, but we are eating the seeds. So these kind of fruits where basically seeds are there is called a berry. You know, berries.
Yes, sir.
So berry is, define one thing. Let's first define fruit. Write down fruit. Fruit. a ripened ovary, or you can write down a fruit, a true fruit is developed after the fertilization of ovary. A true fruit is developed after the fertilization of ovary. And is so and a true fruit is a ripened ovary itself. A true fruit is a ripened ovary itself. Now within it, because this is asked in NEET exam, write down berry. Berries are fleshy fruits. Berries are fleshy fruits that come from a single flower. Berries are fleshy fruits that come from a single flower Hello. What is happening?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Oh. What did you write? I was dictating the whole thing.
Fleshy fruits that come from a single flower.
Single flower with one ovary and several seeds. With one ovary and several seeds. So you will, therefore, there is a reason we always find berries in a, like they always come in bunch, right? So pomegranate is a berry actually. So in the fruit also, in the category of fruits, it's actually a berry. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so now do one thing for your entrance point of view, because in entrances, it's very, I have seen that it's customary that when they ask question about fruits, they will take exceptions. They will take those kind of fruits which actually are not, you know, normal fruit like that, those that do not go by the rule book. And there are multiple such fruits. So what you can do is you can search for yourself that which fruits are not true fruits or which are berries. And also I told you in last class that all the vegetables which we call vegetables are actually fruits, right?
Yes, sir.
Because they are the fruit of the plant which we call vegetables. So there is no such term called vegetable in a plant physiology or a plant anatomy. It's just the fruit of the plant. Now, what is tomato? Is it a fruit or a berry? Tomato has been asked in NEET. Okay, figure out. So go and find out what are true fruits and some famous examples of false fruits, true fruits, and berries. Yes, Aisha.
So can I say, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I think tomato is a berry.
Yes, it is a berry. Very good. But again, you're not sure, right? Why are you not sure?
No, I'm sure, I'm
Oh,
sure, I'm sure. And like tomatoes are also different types, right?
Yes.
Sir, so why they're called
sun-dried ones which
vegetables?
we use for pizza. You're talking about that, right? So small tomatoes looks like berries, so it's easy to say that they are berry.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just imagining that.
Why is apple
Sir,
not a fruit? Tell me, why is apple not a true fruit? Because we see apple, it looks like it's an ovary and inside there is seed, but why is apple not a true fruit? Again, apple has been asked. Apple is famous.
So I can say this answer. So apple, actually I asked this thing to my father.
He said ki I don't like apples because one apple a day keeps the doctor away. Not good for our
uh, so like apple, it like it's developed from 1 minute, sir. Let me check my book.
It's all
Apple develops from the thymus. That's why
exactly.
it is not referred as it is referred it is not prepared as a true fruit.
So what is the thalamus? Where is thalamus? So it's all about flower anatomy. So go back to 10th and revise the flower anatomy. You will realize that, when we cut apple, I don't know. So if you cut apple, so let me take an apple and cut it. Okay. I'm not very good with these fancy drawings, but let me try to make an apple. Something
Sir,
like,
why is tomato called a vegetable normally?
why is tomato called a vegetable?
Yeah, normally.
Like, why do we call vegetables vegetable? This is what are you asking?
Why do tomato falls in the vegetable group?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, there are many such.
So,
Say banana. Banana falls in both vegetable till it is raw, and when it gets ripened, it's a fruit, right?
so,
Sir, why?
So I think vegetable and fruit is just the term that we use to segregate things which actually can be eaten raw and are ready to eat fruits, because fruits mostly are ripened. So everything that is not ripened is not called a fruit. But tomato, you're right, it's also ripened, but still it's called a vegetable. It should have been called a fruit. And I think it's called a fruit only because we have tomato soups and I don't know. So biologically, there is only one term used, which is a fruit. Clear? Ripened ovary is a fruit. That's all. Nothing as a vegetable.
so one
Yeah.
more thing.
What?
Apple developed like apple, like in apple, in apple, it
I can hear like
like.
apple.
So
Like
I mean to say that in all the fruits, when fertilization takes place and and in apple it doesn't take place, right?
No, it does take place in apple.
No, I mean to say that we are eating the ovary of the fruits, right?
Yes, we are. So in apple, fertilization does take place, but we are not eating the ovary. We are eating the ripened.
Yeah.
thalamus.
Yeah, we are eating the raven. I mean to say this time.
Yes, right. Good. But I'm asking, where is this thalamus? So this thalamus is just below the ovary. If you look at a plant, if you look at flower anatomy, if you go to 10th and revise, I'm just trying to show you here that when you cut an apple into half, you see that something, like this is there in apple.
Yeah. Yeah. We will cut it.
Inside there are seeds.
Let's see.
Correct?
Yeah.
Everyone, you are following?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So you know which part of this is fruit? This is a fruit.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Which is not ripened. And exactly this part we remove and eat the rest, right?
Yes.
So that's why we are not eating the fruit actually. Biologically, we are just eating the ripened thalamus, which is around this. So this is an ovary, so this part at some point of time used to be stigma and stamen, which became that thing. And no, on the other side, it was stigma and stamen. Sorry. This was attached to the branch. Here was the stigma and stamen. It got fertilized, came and fertilization happened. There are seeds, but this part, which is ovary, did not ripen. It stayed as it, like it stayed, it's non-edible. It does not have flesh, or it's not fleshy. So this part, which is the actual fruit, we do not eat, but we eat the thalamus, which was below it. It got ripened and covered the fruit. You understand? So we remove this part along with seeds and we eat this juicy part of the apple. That's why it's not a true fruit. We are eating a ripened thalamus in case of apple. Clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
I'm giving an assignment to make a list of famous true fruits, false fruits, which we used to think till now is a fruit like apple. And also
Can I ask one thing?
berries.
Is is apricot a true fruit or false fruit?
Is apple called the fruit of the
No,
fruit?
apricot, not apple.
Apricot.
Yeah.
Bad with these things like apricot. It's called the fruit
Yeah.
of fortune. I don't know. Like, there's no biological relevance to calling it fruit of fortune, but maybe there's no logic behind it. It's like mango is called the king of fruits.
Yeah.
I don't know why. You know, it's just like that. Okay, so this is your assignment for today. Make this so that you know that, because sometimes these questions just come up, and these are the questions which, if you know, you know, you don't know, you can just make a guess or you leave it, because there is negative marking also. So it's very good to know certain facts and certain general knowledge things in the concept that you are studying. So you studied fruits, know some general knowledge about fruits. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So my dad, yesterday he was teaching me, he said me that when you get any answer like options and all, and in that any kind of query is there, you should take it. And I asked why, he said all the queries. Like he said, he was just teaching me, and I'm not asking you, but like, I don't know why, but I will ask so many questions while someone is teaching me. So
It's
he,
good to
he
ask
was,
questions when someone is teaching you, right?
so he was just saying me that all the berries are true fruits. Like when, especially the fruits which you eat. Like I love to eat berries, but I don't like to eat those fruits, that apple, banana, mango, and all. So he was just saying,
I
like
think
if
guava
you're
is not a false fruit.
what guava, I don't know.
It's not a false fruit. Okay. Guava should be respected. That's why I gave you this assignment for today. Okay, go and do this. True fruits. Berries are also actually true fruits, but berries are just one category, different category of true fruits. Okay,
Yeah,
just make this. Just
all
make
the berries are true fruits.
yes, all the berries are true fruits. Okay. So biologically, apple is not a fruit and tomato is a fruit. Okay, so now let's come to the water movement. Okay, perfect. Now there are certain parameters, certain physiological parameters for a plant that helps in this water movement up the xylem vessel. One thing which is very prominent, which I told you about, was the transpirational pull. So there was a pull which got created because of transpiration, and that's called transpirational pull. Apart from that, let's start from the very low. Let's start from the root itself. So we all know that plant absorbs water, right? Makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Let's go by the story. So if you remember this story, you will never have to remember these things about water movement. So root absorbs a lot of water. So whenever a region of a plant starts absorbing water, it either has to send that water to somewhere, or if it is not able to do that, what will happen inside that tissue? Pressure will keep increasing, right? More and more
Yes.
water will start accumulating. So there is a concept called root pressure. Roots have so much of water as compared to other regions of the plant that there is lots and lots of pressure in the root, which is called root pressure. So the first thing that starts this movement or kick starts or give it a initiation is called root pressure. Anyone knows what is a root pressure or can guess what is a root pressure? It's the hydrostatic pressure. Sorry, Mariam, were you going to say the same thing?
No, sir, different thing.
Yeah, what? What? Tell me. What were you saying, Mariam?
So okay, fine, let my say please. I also have different.
Yes, Mariam, to you.
Yes, sir, sorry, sir. There was something. The transpirational pull.
Transpirational pull? The transpirational pull is not in the roots. It's there top in the leaves. How is it related to root pressure?
Never mind, sir.
Okay, Aisha, you were saying something about root pressure?
Yeah, sir. I was saying that root pressure, it is the transverse osmotic pressure with the cells of fluid system.
It is the, sorry, I could not catch you.
Transverse osmotic pressure.
What matic pressure?
No,
Transverse
transverse
osmotic
osmotic pressure.
Transfers. Can you type it? Because can you type it in the chat?
Sir,
Yeah, I can
transverse.
share.
Transverse. Okay, transverse
Yeah,
pressure.
yeah,
Of what? Transverse of what?
osmotic pressure.
Transverse osmotic pressure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And no. Okay. Let me tell you how. So basically, let's define it. Write down root pressure. Okay. So Aisha, just to figure out that you understood it correctly or not, let me ask you one question. What do you think root pressure is, a positive pressure or a negative pressure?
Root pressure.
Is a positive pressure or a negative pressure?
It's
Transpirational pull is a
Sir,
positive
can I?
pressure or
so
negative?
it's negative, I guess. I don't know. It's
Sir,
negative.
positive, right?
It's negative.
I asked both transpirational pull and root pressure. Which of these two is positive and which is negative?
Root pressure is positive.
Mhm.
Root.
And
So root
yes,
pressure is negative.
root pressure is negative. And transpirational pull?
It's positive, I think so.
So that's what I was thinking, and that's correct. So you understood it ulta. Okay. Root pressure is a positive pressure because it's a pressure that's created with more and more concentration of water coming into the root and a hydrostatic pressure building up. So hydrostatic has two words. So root pressure basically builds because of hydrostatic. The word hydro means water, and the word static means
Stationary.
stationary, right? So if there is water somewhere, if it enters somewhere and stays there, it starts exerting a pressure, correct? Sometimes during the winters, people get swelling in their toes and in the fingers, right? Anyone has suffered that?
Yes, sir.
And you will feel that there is a lot of itching there also, because that also has a lot of water inside. The tissues are filled with water, or your lymph fluid, which is again water basically. So a lot of water stays there and starts creating a pressure that's called hydrostatic pressure. So root pressure is basically a hydrostatic pressure that gets created when water is absorbed by the roots, and ultimately when it is absorbed here, let's see this diagram. When it's absorbed here, it has to be dumped into the xylem, right? So that it can be taken, like it can be flown, taken to the top. If it is not done, then a lot of pressure gets exerted here, right? In the epidermis, cortex, endodermis, and the pericycle, correct? That is called a root turgor pressure or root pressure. Roots become turgid, and then they start pushing water into the xylem more and more. So that is the first pressure that kick starts the xylem flow. So write down, root pressure is a positive pressure. Root pressure is a positive pressure and is responsible for act, transport of responsible for transport of water and dissolved ions through water and dissolved ions into the xylem, into the xylem, into the xylem. Next point, write down root pressure. Root pressure follows. Root pressure follows the concept of potential gradient. The concept of potential gradient. So more and more water is coming. So the potential of water is increasing in the initial layers, and towards the xylem, it's falling down. So there's a pressure from the initial layers towards the xylem, which keeps pushing more and more water into the xylem, and which slightly pushes the water towards the top in the xylem as well. But root pressure is not that strong to push the water all the way to the leaves. Do you understand it?
Yes, sir.
But it kickstarts. So there is a positive pressure playing a role, which is root pressure, also called as hydrostatic pressure or root turgor pressure, TURGOR. Same thing, same names for all. Okay. Now write down proof of existence of root pressure. This is asked in boards. It can also be asked in entrances by making some points. Now, how do we say that root pressure is actually a true phenomena? It actually exists because we are saying that there is a pressure, but how can we say when there is a pull from the top, maybe all the movement is happening from the pull only and there is no push. So how can we prove that there's a push? Anyone? If I give this experiment to you, Mariam, or to Abhinav, or anyone, Rihab, Omar, how will you prove that there is a pressure existing? And it's not just the play of the pull, the transpiration pull. Any idea?
Sir, when a suction is created, so pressure is created?
When the suction is?
Sir, when a suction is created.
Suction of what? Suction is happening at the top in the leaves. That is the suction only, where the transpirational, so you are evaporating water and making a vacuum, which is acting like a suction in that whole channel.
Yes, sir.
From the roots, there is no suction, no, there is absorption. So roots are constantly absorbing water. And I am telling you to prove me that there is actually a root pressure.
Oh.
So the only way to prove that there is a root pressure is to check the movement or to check the transport in xylem when there is no transpirational pull or minimum transpirational pull, correct? During the winters, okay, transpirational pull is not happening, correct? Because evaporation is not happening effectively during a winter night. And we can prove it in grasses. So grasses are very small, like, few inches from the ground, correct? But the roots of grasses are very, very diverse. So if you try to uproot a grass, sometimes it will be difficult for you to uproot grass. You can cut grass or trim grasses easily with a grass lawnmower, but to uproot all the grasses is actually a tedious job because grass have very interconnected roots everywhere. Anyone has observed this? Yes or no? Say yes or no.
No, sir.
No, okay. So you can see in grasses when there is no evaporation. So you all agree and appreciate that for transpirational pull to be created, there has to be active evaporation happening from the stomatal opening. If there is no evaporation, then there will be no transpirational pull formed, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? During a winter night, there is no evaporation happening.
Yes, sir.
It's a cold winter night, no evaporation. So if there is no evaporation happening, there is no transpirational pull being created. And if still on the blades of the grass, if you can see these dewdrops, which means these dewdrops are actually coming out of these stomatal openings only because of the root pressure playing its part throughout the night. It's slow, but for a grass, it's enough. For tall trees, it's not enough, correct? But this proves that even when there is no transpirational pull happening, or there is no active evaporation happening from the leaves, still water from the roots can reach till the leaves, correct?
Yes, sir.
And to test it even better, what you can do is there have been experiments done where you culture grass, where you give them water with a dye in it, a specific dye which is not metabolized, like some dyes which cannot get metabolized in any biological system. So if it is absorbed by the root and the next morning you see the same dye in a dewdrop at the top of the leaf, what does it mean?
The dye from the
The dye
root.
traveled with the water, right?
Yes, sir.
And since there was no evaporation happening, so there was no transpirational pull being created, so all of it happened because of a positive root pressure only, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it correct, everyone? Everyone agrees?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So write down, and this process where we are proving the presence of root pressure, a positive pressure, is called guttation. So define guttation, because they can ask you this. I think it's GATTION, guttation. I don't know if it's an NCERT or not, but it's important to know. Write down. During the nights, or during low, no, let's not define it like this. Write down. In effect of the root pressure, in effect of the root pressure, the collection of excess water in effect of the root pressure, in effect of the root pressure and in absence of evaporation, in effect of the root pressure and in absence of evaporation, in bracket write down transpirational pull, so that is absent. The collection of excess water, in the form of droplets near the tip of the grass blades, grass leaves are like blades, right?
Yes, sir.
And also in leaves of small herbs, so basically the plant has to be small, like mint. You will see this happening in mint, because mint are very small herbs, they are just like grasses, such loss of water in liquid phase, is known as guttation, So if you do this experiment with a red dye, which cannot be metabolized and which can just pass on, it will look like the grass is bleeding. Okay, it's bleeding through the leaves, edges of the leaves, it's bleeding. And that proves that even though there was no evaporation, because in evaporation the water loss happens in a gaseous phase, understand? When you are
Yes, sir.
evaporating, you are losing water, but in a gaseous phase. But the morning dew, or this guttation process, when the water is lost, it is lost in the liquid phase. And this process is called guttation, which is a proof for the presence of a root pressure, a positive pressure actually, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how many of you know the meaning of the word guttation? There are it's used in normally, like many novel writers also use this word guttation, like just for bleed through, just like these plants are losing water in liquid phase from their edges, in the same manner. Okay, so root pressure is clear, everyone? Any doubts in root pressure? Anyone has
No, sir.
not written anything? Okay, so the second one, write down transpirational pull. The major player, transpirational pull. Now for transpirational pull to happen, you all will agree that you need evaporation and you need a temperature which can evaporate water, right?
Yes, sir.
So transpirational pull is difficult to like establish in very, very cold environments, correct? Okay. Oh, in the root pressure, also write one more point, just like if you have space, please, I'm so sorry, write down root pressure can only provide a modest push to the water transport. It can only provide a modest push to the water transport, but does not play a major role in water transport in tall trees. Is it clear? Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the major player is transpirational pull. So write down. I have told you about cohesion tension theory, right? The cohesion tension thing.
Yes, sir.
So then I think you just have to write certain things that are important for. So that is basically transpirational pull, that you evaporate water from these stomatal openings, which will create a suction pull, because of which and water in the xylem can easily move up because it shows cohesive properties. So it can stick to the walls and move up. And also because of tension of the water, the in between weight will also go up as it will move from the walls, right? I did made those diagrams, right? Mercury and
Yes,
water.
sir.
Yeah, okay, that's clear then. So write down some important things about it. Rate of transpirational pull, or rate of flow of water through xylem. Both are the same thing and it has been asked. So you have to remember. Write down the upward flow of water in xylem. The upward flow of water in xylem has a rate of, rate is anything upon time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Anything upon time is rate. Has a rate of around 15 meters per hour, which is quite, right? It's impressive. 15 meters per hour. Good. Even if you have a 100-meter tall tree, within a day, you can reach there, right? The water which has been absorbed from the root can reach the leaves within a day. And I told you, if it just was dependent on diffusion or osmosis, it would have taken decades, correct?
Yes, sir.
Going cell by cell by cell, the tree will just die. So 15 meters per hour is the approximate rate. And then cohesion tension pull model is the most accepted model that I have already told you. And write down water utilization ratio. This is also asked. Water utilization ratio. Write down less than 1% of the total water, less than 1% of the total water reaching the leaves is used in photosynthesis and plant growth. So what does it mean? What does it mean?
Less water is utilized in photosynthesis.
That is the so it's analogous to the glomerular filtrate being produced by our kidneys, but what is the urine production? 1.5 liters in a day. Most of it get reabsorbed, correct? Here it's
Yes, sir.
opposite. So much of water goes through the plant upwards, but around 99, more than 99% of that water gets evaporated to create this transpirational pull. Do you understand this?
Yes, sir.
Only 1% or less than 1% is utilized for photosynthesis and the development of the plant itself. So only 1% of the water is utilized by the plant. Rest, it's actively. So water is just going from the below and evaporating from the top. This is exactly what plants are doing throughout the day. Okay. And this is why even when plants, again, it's a high order thinking skill question in board's paper in CBSE, plants are stationary. So the question was like this, that plants are stationary. They stand in the heat all through the day, right? But still the surface temperature of plant's leaf is around 10 to 15 degrees less than the atmospheric temperature. How? Because
Due to evaporation.
yes, they are doing constant enormous evaporation of all the water that they are getting from the roots, and they are doing so they are maintaining their temperature very low. That's why howsoever hot the environment is and the temperature is, if you can find a big banyan tree and you sit in its shade, you will feel cool, right? Because plants are able to maintain their temperatures of the leaves around 10 to 15 degrees less than the ambient temperature. This can only be achieved by profound evaporation from the leaves, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this is the water utilization ratio. 99% of it gets evaporated, only 1% is utilized. Okay. And most of this loss is happening through stomata, correct? Not all, but most, yes. Okay, so transpiration pull is done. Root pressure, so both positive pressure, you can also mention here that this is a positive pressure and this is a negative pressure, and the major role is played by the negative pressure. What happened to my pen? Oh, yes, so this is a negative pressure, the predominant one. Okay, cohesion, adhesion, everything I have told you. Now, last thing for today that we will discuss is, again, it's discussive, and I think it's important for the boards only, not for entrances. I've not seen it being asked in entrances. Now I have given you some information. So if you think clearly as a biologist, there will be a question in your mind that transpiration is happening every time in the leaf, right? Like in the plant. That's why 99% of the water is getting evaporated, correct? Photosynthesis is happening almost like throughout the day, like when the light is there, right? It's happening during the daytime, it's happening constantly. And water is required in both, but most of the water is being lost in transpiration. So transpiration and photosynthesis happening together in a plant is like a compromise, right? Plant has to compromise some things to do something else, correct? So photosynthesis is very, very beneficial. We all know it because they are synthesizing their own food. But why is transpiration so important that 99% of that water loss the plant is happy to bear? And it's bearing, right? It's evolutionarily settled and it's bearing. Why? The reason is because transpiration is not just there to create the pull, just to create this flow. Transpiration has more purposes also. Like first important is to create this transpirational pool as we know it. Other thing is it cools down the plant, right? We just discussed. So if this question comes that why transpiration is allotted so much of water, and sometimes, you know, to like you compromise photosynthesis for transpiration, because photosynthesis is you make your food. Maybe it's enough food you have made, but to regulate your temperature is also important. Otherwise, the plant tissues will start getting damaged or it can dehydrate and die, right? So if I'm not wrong, anyone has NCRT with you right now? Mariam, Aisha?
1 minute, sir.
Yeah. Can you open your NCRT and in transport of plants, see that there will be a, if I remember correctly, there is a subheading transpiration and photosynthesis, a compromise. You all open your books.
Yes, sir.
NCERT. Is it there? What is the page number?
Yes,
Can
sir.
you please convey for your
Page
friend?
number 189.
189. 189. So page 189 of your NCERT, everyone, is important. It's a 5-marker question. Multiple times have been asked because. So just read this paragraph, mark this paragraph, and you know that transpiration has more important functions to play in a plant than just to create the pool, right? So this is the last thing I wanted to say to you. So make a star mark. This is an important, it can be a direct question for your boards. Clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
So in the next class, before finishing this mineral uptake, I will finish hormones. Is it okay for all of you? We have already finished auxins. We'll finish gibberellins, ethylene, abscisic acid, and one more, PAA. And then we'll come back to transport and we'll finish with translocation and phloem movement. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you have any doubts, please ask me. Any doubts, people? And do the assignments. Sorry. You have any doubts? No one has any doubt?
No, sir.
No,
Okay.
sir.
Then see you next time. Bye.